Jenny,
Yes.
your career bridges traditional finance and the crypto frontier from 10 years at Goldman Sachs to heading compliance at Anchorage Digital and now taking on a dual leadership role, CCO and COO at Savvy Labs. You've helped a crypto startup obtain a federal bank charter and even navigated regulatory storms. So yeah, I don't want to go over the resume. I want to explore really the inflection points, your personal choices, and everything that motivated it. So yeah, I would love to start with the beginning. That's quite interesting. You didn't start out as a typical finance major or lawyer. You actually studied psychology at UC Berkeley. What pulled you into the finance world?
Yeah, great question. Usually when I introduce myself, we don't start that early on, that all the way
I
back.
went a couple of years back, did I?
Yeah, but great question. Love to share that story. I think I kind of fell into the finance industry, really. So, you know, taking even a few years even prior to that, going into college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Really appreciated art, was thinking about maybe art school, but being a first generation, Chinese American, that was not something my parents wanted to sponsor. So the deal was, get a 4-year degree and then you're free to do whatever you want to do. So I figured, love talking to people, meeting people. Okay, psychology seems cool. As you mentioned, got my BA at Berkeley in psychology, and that was amazing. But I realized, close to graduation, that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. Without aging myself, I did graduate in 2003. So it was probably not the best time to graduate.
Yep.
And so the world was really coming out of a recession. Not getting a grad degree as a psych major, job prospects were bleak. So I really had to really consider, what made sense for me. And through my college career, like during the summers, I had worked at a retail brokerage, and I thought that world was very fascinating for me. So decided to kind of, give it a try. Coming right out of college, I was still in tip-top shape to take exams.
Yep.
So took a few FINRA exams. Started off my career as a sales trader at the retail brokerage. And then a year later, I had the opportunity to transition into training compliance. And that's really how I got into finance, into compliance. I realized that, compliance is really kind of the field I wanted to develop my career in.
For someone that wanted to do art, decided that they like people and wanted to do psychology, and then going into finance and compliance feels like not a stretch, but it's it's interesting. But do you think that this background that you had in understanding people and their behaviors changed the way or inferred on the way you've been doing compliance for the past 2 decades now?
Yeah. Yes. Without aging myself again. Yeah. But yes, I can't believe it. 2 decades. Definitely.
You look great. Don't worry.
Thank you. But definitely, right? So at the end of the day, we're working with people. And, understanding human psychology, human behavior has been very instrumental in my journey as a compliance professional, from how we design processes, design compliance architecture, all of that, systems, to, from two sides, understanding what is the easiest way for people to understand and interpret policies, procedures, trainings, all of that, to understanding potentially how, if someone wanted to, conduct nefarious activities, right? Like what are potential loopholes and how to mitigate that, all of that. So I do think that having a psychology background helped me to really become a better compliance professional. It also helped me to be able to look at data and really understand and interpret that as well. So that has really helped. It's even helped me as a compliance manager, leader as well, to really understand, the needs of the team, and how to really keep people motivated and encouraged.
I want to dig into the Chinese American backgrounds, right? You then went to Goldman Sachs. and you spent 10 years at Goldman. And during that, there was quite a bit of a APAC stint where you were in APAC and in the US. What is it like building your compliance careers across those two different markets? And I'm especially curious on the people side of things. I mean, those are two very, very, very different cultures. How do you do it and how do you think about it?
So I think, building my career across these two regions has been really interesting for me. I think, at a high level, one thing I became really good at was learning about how to communicate and observing who the audience was, right? So, potentially, I mean, I think we can all agree there are cultural differences between how people think, how they react across the two different regions, from a cultural perspective. So the way we speak, the way we engage may be interpreted differently with one group versus another. Although I think working at a global American investment bank, even in Asia, we were pretty Americanized, right? But in terms of how we spoke to our stakeholders, how we wanted to present things, you always had to somewhat tailor it a little bit, and that's something I quickly learned how to do, and I became, I would say, really good at over the 10 years I was there.
Nice. And so you were running entity level regulatory reporting for all of Goldman North America, which does sound like an incredibly big scope. What is the hardest thing about that role, and what did it teach you that you couldn't have learned any other way?
I think that role was interesting because it was across several different types of entities within the U.S. So Goldman has a constellation, like number of entities, regulated entities just in the US. And, North America would, add a tremendous number there as well. And so understanding what the regulatory requirements were for each of those entities, the regulators, they're all a little bit different. The definitions of how you would report to one regulator for one set of data would be different for another one. So all those intricacies was something we had to really build out and define. But that was something that my team was, really great at, really digging in deep, understanding the differences and setting up a process, which helped us become more efficient and effective as we built out that program.
When you think about those first years at Goldman versus the last years at Goldman, what do you think compliance was about? And in hindsight, what did you get wrong or right about, your initial perceptions of what it would be?
I always thought we had like the gold standard in terms of compliance, across many of the larger institutions. And so, it was interesting the training we got there. We understood, where compliance as an organization fit in terms of the overall firm. We understood the remit, about how we're using these tools such as training, policies, procedures, regulatory interactions, testing, monitoring, all of that as tools to help us to keep the firm and its employees out of trouble, right? And that is 100% absolutely true. But as I've kind of taken on different roles, even within Goldman, but also after I left Goldman, I've come to see that compliance is so much more than that, right? I think that one of the most commercial things that a company can do, big or small, is to be compliant,
Yeah.
right? And so before I had this mindset that we were not so much like playing defense, but we're keeping people out of trouble. But it's so much more than that. And as we do that, keeping everyone out of trouble, we are actually also being commercial. We're offering a very special value add to our clients, right? And so that is a shift in mentality that I've come to realize, later on in my career. And I think it's 100% absolutely true.
after that, you've gone rogue. I mean, I didn't say that, but a lot of your friends apparently said that you went rogue. All right, 10 years at Goldman Sachs, you're literally the pinnacle of finance.
Yeah.
And in 2019, you decided to go to Anchorage Digital. What was going through your mind when you went from this 10-year stint of leading one of the biggest departments of the biggest bank in the world to joining Anchorage, which obviously incredible company, but maybe at the time less obvious choice?
At that moment in time, that was 2019, I had literally just crossed my 10-year mark, got this beautiful cube, which they give to all employees who've celebrated their 10-year anniversary. I definitely still have it on my desk at home. And, I was at a great point in my career, right? Team was great, loved the leadership, loved the culture at the firm as well. But I think at the same time, I could really see how my career would be for the next 5 to 10 years, right? And so, and that's a great thing, and that would have been a wonderful thing, and it would have been a wonderful career. However, I wanted to try something a little bit different, right? And so when the Anchorage opportunity came, when I look back, I think what I did was, I took a calculated risk. I thought, okay, looking at the risk and rewards, and also, laying everything out on the table. At that time in 2019, crypto was hot, exciting, right? But less mainstream as it is today, as, we're sitting here in 2026, right? Yep. And so, like you said, I wasn't even sure, well, is crypto a thing here to stay or not? I wasn't sure. And Anchorage was kind of a double whammy, right? Great startup, but also it's hasn't been around as long as Goldman. So again,
very few companies have.
Exactly. But I figured I was being offered an opportunity to build not only a compliance program from scratch, but the entire team from scratch, and able to apply everything I've learned to applying it to a new digital asset class, which I thought was just so enticing. And, I felt like all the steps leading up to that point has been really preparing me for that opportunity, right? And so that was really exciting for me. And, I told myself, hey, if it doesn't work out or if I don't like it, like my previous experience doesn't go away just because I tried something. Yeah. And so decided to take a leap. And, I remember when I resigned and, I was, making my rounds saying goodbye to people. They didn't say it out loud, but potentially some people thought I was going rogue, going to the crypto realm. But, in hindsight, it was a great decision. It really helped me to really expand on my knowledge and practice in general.
Also building the first OCC regulated crypto company, and I think it still is the only OCC regulated crypto company, right?
Operating,
well, yeah.
Right.
Big change indeed.
Yes.
In interviews, you've argued the divide between traditional finance and crypto is mostly a misperception, saying that as a fundamental level, it's all the same in terms of risk. It is, at the time, probably a bold stance, considering that for a lot of people, crypto is considered as being the Wild West. How did you come to see digital assets and traditional assets as fundamentally similar in terms of risk?
When I look at, situations or complicated problems, I always like to boil it down to the basics, the foundation, right? And so I look at the, kind of the concerns regulators may have on the digital asset space at that time, right? And compared it to what I've known leading up to that point in the TradFi space, right? What regulators were expecting, what they were concerned with. And I realized, hey, these are all very similar problems, right? Like fraud, money laundering, right? Operational failures, all of that, right? And I realized that at the end of the day, the goals are always the same across asset classes, across the regulators. And so in many ways, I feel that, and I continue to feel that way, that there are more similarities than differences between TradFi and crypto. It's just, the applications are different. The tools, the technology you have to help mitigate the risk, control for it, identify risk may be different, but the fundamentals are very similar.
Would you say that like your experience at Goldman was one of the key factors in helping the team get, an OCC charter and you knowing really how to get into the weeds and know probably as well the regulators and whatnot?
For me personally, definitely what I brought to the table would be my set of experience
Yeah,
from Goldman and even, earlier on. But I think, it's the whole team, the leadership
of
team,
course.
right? And so it's not any one person, any one team that's really helped us to be able to get that charter.
So you're really vocal about the trust initiative. So for people that don't know, travel rule universal solution technology.
Hmm.
And you called it the clearest sign yet that digital assets players as an industry truly care about compliance. What made that moment feel significant to you? And do you think, that's really something specific to crypto that's helping compliance in general?
I think that was a very good example of the crypto industry coming together to kind of structure and build the infrastructure needed to meet the regulatory expectations and also the kind of the process in order to uh, push, the digital asset space into to become more mainstream. So it was a very needed step because, as you know, in TradFi for many years, you have the Fed rails, you have the infrastructure that's already been there, but that's, something that's been built on for many, many years, right, in order for us to get to that point. And so I think the crypto industry had done an amazing job coming together quickly and in a very united way to really, meet those needs and, work together.
What's the biggest cultural shock? 10 years in TradFi, then swinging to crypto, um, especially from a centuries old bank. Um, at Goldman, I imagined that you had Stripe's informal processes. Anchorage was more of a tech startup vibe.
Mhm.
Um, what was the biggest cultural shock, the most surprising thing when landing there?
Being at a well-established bank, as you mentioned, you're used to meeting people who've come from other well-established banks, right, on the street. And it's like, oh, hi. When you introduce each other, it's like, I'm from this bank. Oh, you're from another bank. It's kind of a revolving door within these different banks, right? And one of what that also means is that everyone kind of starts off with a similar set of understanding of risk and compliance and understanding fiduciary obligations, conduct risk, all of that, right? And so that's something I had started off my career being used to, like where when you're training people, talking to people, everyone has they basically have started from a very similar kind of place and understanding. And so it did make my job a lot easier as a compliance officer when you're talking to them and trying to influence um, you know, or to communicate different
Yep.
policies, procedures. Um, but coming into crypto, you realize that you have people who've never been in the financial industry, right? They're like, they've come from other fintechs, right? Or a pure big tech company, right? And so going back to basics again, right? And then having that communication to have people understand, not assuming that everyone understands what you're talking about when you're talking about, conflicts of interest, right? Or personal account trading, all of that. And really boiling it down again back to the basic fundamentals to help people understand was such a fun process because, after a while you kind of just think like everyone's speaking the same language, same jargon. You know what I'm talking about. I know what you're talking about. But then coming back and being like, okay, oh yeah, well, why did we have these policies? What kind of risk are we trying to mitigate, right? Boiling that down even for myself was just fun, right? And then regurgitating and helping to communicate that back out to everyone else was a very fun process and actually made me a better compliance officer.
Before we go deeper, I'd love to help our audience understand what Savvy Labs is building. I don't think everyone here knows necessarily about them. So I'll give the one-liner that I understand.
Yeah.
SEC-registered investment advisor focused on on institutional investors. But what problem is it solving, and why was this the opportunity you chose after Anchorage?
So Savvy Labs, like you mentioned, SEC registered investment advisor, we're really trying to solve for a couple of problems, but mainly helping to provide a tech layer for asset managers, for wealth managers, to help them provide more customization to their clients. So we probably all have seen and read somewhere at some point about the generational wealth transfer, right? And, so there definitely is a lot of focus on people, wealth being transferred across different generations. The generation now who's kind of now becoming, inheriting and receiving a lot of that wealth are now demanding more technology, right? And then have more expectations around customization. And so our platform really helps to achieve that and helps asset managers who are not, one of the few handful large asset managers in the industry have that technology to provide that service to their clients.
How many people are at Savvy Labs right now?
We're at 16.
Okay, 16 people. We're at 12. So it's a fast-moving startup. I know the gist.
Yes.
Compliance can feel sometimes like the brakes on a race car. Not for everyone, but just putting it out there. Have you ever had to push the kibosh on an existing product or partnership because it didn't meet compliance standards?
No joke, but that has not happened in that sense. It has, of course, we have said no. I'm not saying we say yes to everything, but the conversation quickly, shifts from no and then talking about it is helping them understand why it's a no, but then it's also the conversation quickly transitions to, well, if not now, how do we get there, right? And so it becomes a very productive conversation, and so all of the kind of assumptions about how that becomes like a kind of like a horrible conversation actually is not true, because I've been fortunate enough to be working with a lot of thought leaders who have a compliance first mindset, and quickly the next question is, okay, well then how do we get there? And then we work together to formulate those steps.
That's great. That's exactly the way. It's funny, I've had a conversation with the Chief Compliance Officer of Melio, Nick, who had exactly the same way of seeing things. So
that's
100%
great.
agree with you. One of the things that's probably the most unique about what I've seen in your profile, I've seen people go from TradFi to crypto, and even though your tenure was quite impressive there, you have two C-suite titles. You're Chief Operating Officer and Chief Compliance Officer, which is quite an unusual combination, because I'll have to say, like, as someone who's selling RegTech, these are my two ICPs, and you embody both of them. So how does it come about?
I'm glad someone's asked me that because it's, a story which I think is great. And, now I think about it, was quite brilliant on part of the leadership team at Savvy, right? So I started off as a CCO and did what CCOs do, build up the compliance team and controls, policies, trainings, all the fun stuff, right? And as you know, compliance's touch points across the firm is expansive. So quickly leadership thought, and I, realized that it would be not only most beneficial for the company, but also for our clients, for us to be building out the processes in the first instance with a compliance first mindset, instead of building it up a different way and then later needing to walk back or, hopefully nothing horrid happens, but if something were to happen, needing to rebuild processes, right? So it's better to build a process, operational processes, right the first time with a compliance first mindset.
But do you ever feel like you're wearing two different hats that tug in opposite directions?
That was definitely something I wondered about at first as well. And so, but, when this opportunity did come about, when I was asked to take on a more expanded role, my response was, thank you very much for, considering me for this expanded role. And I'm happy to do it. But just so you know, between the two, when push comes to shove, I'm the CCO first before I'm the COO, right?
Yeah, because like the CCO in you wants to drive growth and speed and like reduce costs, and the CCO, I mean the COO at first, and the CCO, very different, wants to ensure control, compliance, and whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can even tell us, but is there a specific example that comes to mind where the CCO had to, push out the COO out of the way?
So I'll give you a real life example, a recent one also. As you know, like AI is a hot topic. And as the COO, that is always something top of mind for me, is to have more efficient processes operationally and from a business perspective throughout the organization. And so that's definitely something that our clients want to see. We want to see from a management perspective, investors want to see as well. So definitely there is that commercial kind of need and drive, right? But, as the CCO, we don't want to stifle innovation. We don't want to stifle tech advancements, but at the same time, we have to be very thoughtful about what we implement and, what measures we take. So there have been times where, we had to, I wouldn't say halt, but more slow things down until we've gone through and, at first created the process to review and governed this review and analysis for AI tools. And so creating a committee that reviews for privacy, for data usage, through these AI tools and helping to kind of streamline that process, but making sure that we're thoughtful and careful and, still being able to provide our fiduciary obligations to our clients. That's a good example of where we had to slow things down, but we eventually still got there.
It's one thing to be the expert rule keeper, but now you're also running much of the business. Were there areas of the COO role that you initially felt less prepared for, and how did you quickly get up to speed?
I would say similarly, I think technology, right? So I think as a, previously in compliance, right, we are more doing reviewing, right, and assessing, and people are presenting the tools or the technology to you to see, can we use this? Is it safe, right? And then it's like someone coming to you with already a set of not the problems, but a set of options and choices for you to pick out, right? And then as the COO, you kind of have to go explore and look for that set of the universe of options or tool set to present to the committee. So that's kind of a different mindset. So I think, as a CCO nowadays as well, I think, understanding technology and keeping abreast not only of regulatory changes, but technology advancements and changes is a more expanded and new area, which I think maybe even a couple of decades ago, it was less relevant, but more and more so now.
I do feel like sometimes when I have my sales conversations and I have to talk to ops and I have to talk to compliance, that thing where there's sometimes resentment from ops because it feels like compliance doesn't understand enough the business needs, and like resentment from compliance because it feels like they don't understand enough the compliance needs. But you were, and you still are, as you said, mostly a CCO, and like that's the role that you embody more.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that now being in the day-to-day operations have made you a better CCO?
Yeah, definitely. Although I would like to think I've always been very good at my job.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, thank you. No, but I definitely, as the COO, I can understand even more fundamentally the needs of the business, and a lot of the commercial drive, looking at and hearing directly from our clients firsthand what their needs are, and then creating for solutions that make sense. I'm now going through that part of the process now. Definitely helps me understand the front end,
Yeah,
right? Before the request comes to compliance, where it comes from. And, it actually both ways helps me become a good COO as well,
of course.
because we're able to create solutions more efficiently.
My last question, that dual role, because I find it very interesting, by the way. Uh, how has it shaped or influenced Savvy's culture?
I would look at this a different way. I would say that because Savvy's culture has been always a compliance first
Hmm.
culture, and the leadership team has been of a compliance first mindset, where that's why they presented me with this opportunity. Another good example would be that uh, the compliance team was actually hired and built out even before any of the other like operations or finance teams, right? So after engineering, I was brought on like 2+ years ago, right? So, really embodying that kind of compliance first mindset has always been in the culture of this company.
Road ahead,
Yes.
fintech, compliance, legacy. I want to go into the future of compliance. All right. Having straddled the old and new financial worlds, what do you see coming in the next 5 to 10 years that today's compliance leaders need to be ready for?
I touched on this earlier as well, but technology, right? Having a good handle of technology, and how quickly it's changing AI as well, right? All of these things are, demands which compliance officers need to fully understand. Um, which again was not a thing of like 10 years ago, for example. So I think for a compliance officer, your foundation now requires you to have a good grasp of regulations, understand your product, understand your business, your clients, all of that. That still holds true, but the application may look different. So you may be applying your knowledge to crypto, for example, or to the wealth management space, or using different tools such as blockchain analytics or AI tools, right? So having a very broad breadth of knowledge is, I think, foundational and is a must have for a compliance officer to be successful.
How do you think like emerging trends, like there's been DeFi, AI in finance, and there's ever, tightening regulations. How do you think that's going to change the role of the CCO in 5 years?
I think with all of these changes, all the areas you've mentioned, I think, all of them are a little bit different. Like DeFi is different, AI for compliance, all of that is different. Again, I think I think all of these things is going to force compliance as a function to be more broad and more knowledgeable, right? Become more savvy in terms of our knowledge. And it's not about just, focusing on one thing that you're doing in your vertical and that's all you're focused on, right? So it's really becoming not a generalist, but always being up to speed in terms of the latest developments and so on. So there are different risks. DeFi has different kind of risk. AI on business and compliance have different
Yeah.
risks as well. So making sure that your foundations are strong, so you know how to mitigate the risk and identify that. That's going to be a new challenge for compliance officers, because there are, a lot of new kinds of technology.
So you've been a pioneer in a lot of ways, let's say. You've taken unconventional career risks. You've shaped the first crypto bank. You're currently wearing multiple hats. When you think big picture, what impact or legacy do you hope to have on the fintech and compliance industry, if any?
I don't know about legacy, but I hope that I can really set an example for others to see that, um, you know, uh, innovation is really key. We see it all around us, right? And it is possible going from one industry to another, and being able to apply your knowledge to a new set of standards, to a new asset class. All of that is possible, and it is kind of the way of the future, right? Because every day you see, maybe not every day, but we're seeing this more and more frequently, how many different industries are evolving. There's consolidation, et cetera. And so keeping a kind of innovation first kind of mindset, and being thoughtful about that, obviously, I think is key and is going to be, hopefully something I can demonstrate for others that's possible.
And is there any cultural shift you hope you can contribute to in that space? It is a lot of managed space as well, and there's always been that, hey, compliance is friction and whatnot. So yeah, I would love to understand if there's like a change in the industry or a cultural shift you'd like to be part of.
I would like to see, and I am seeing this a lot already, but what I spoke about earlier on seeing compliance not only as kind of only a control function, but really a commercial function as well, I think is a change in mentality, which is I think needed, right? And I think is demonstrating to be more and more true across different industries.
So now I'm going to go back again, but it's,
Okay.
you said you wanted to be in the arts, and then because of, first generation Chinese immigrants in the US, your parents really wanted you to do something with a degree. And you went ahead, 10 years at Goldman, 3 years at Anchorage, now 2.5 years at Savvy. Are you proud of yourself?
Yes, but being the Chinese American my parents raised, I always feel like I
Not
haven't
enough.
done enough yet. Right? Good so far, but I can do more. I should be doing more. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm very happy and fortunate for all the opportunities I've had so far, the people I've met. I think because of all of these experiences, I've really become, I've been able to become the person that I am today and the professional that I am today. But yeah, I feel like I'm kind of just getting started,
Yeah.
Well, after I left Anchorage, when I was I think you kind of asked me this earlier as well, but, when I went from, large bank like Goldman to Anchorage, and then to an even smaller startup, right? Like what brought me there? It's really the team, it's the people, but more fundamentally, it's my interest and curiosity and want to build. Right?
Yeah.
I like to innovate and have change, and so for at least that may change 10 years down the line when we have another podcast recording.
100%.
But for
You'll be the
now.
one hosting.
Okay, yeah, I would love that. You'll be my first guest. But yeah, that's where I am now, and people evolve too, and so at least now I feel like I still have a lot more that I can do.
Well, maybe you'll start a company in a couple of years to complete the arc from the big to the small to the smaller to yourself. So.
Yeah, maybe.
And so for young professionals listening, maybe those starting in traditional finance but eyeing crypto or the fintech space, what advice would you give?
So two things come to mind. One, always try to identify mentors and teachers or people who can, whether it's taking a personal kind of interest in your success, or people who just want to share their experience. There's so much for you to gain from that. And, they're really going to be able to help you to either navigate your career better, or to potentially, avoid some mishaps so that you don't have to also experience it firsthand yourself. Because I can think of many other productive ways you can use your time instead of needing to go through all of that, but still understand what the challenges are. I think that's number one. And then number two, I would say don't be afraid to take risks. It needs to be calculated risk, right?
I'll quote that. I'll just put that extract in the
Yeah.
video. Take risks from a compliance leader.
Yeah, it's calculated risks, right? So it's something to be thoughtful, to be intentional about the risks you're taking, but without taking any risk. I don't think that it'll be much slower for you to develop as an individual, as a professional, even as a business. The safest way is to take no risk, right?
Yep.
But that would be very hard and detrimental for an organization. So always be thoughtful, mindful, and take calculated risks.
Love it. Well, listen, it was a great podcast. I'd love to finish with a rapid quick fire. Does that work?
Yes.
Lovely. One word that defines great compliance leadership.
Honesty.
Most overrated compliance trend right now.
Compliance theater.
Most underrated tool or control that actually works.
Training.
A fintech mistake you've seen more than once and wish would stop.
Overlooking compliance controls.
Hardest thing to explain to a non-compliance colleague.
Including compliance early on helps to make things more efficient in the long run.
One compliance task you'd automate tomorrow if you could.
Monitoring across different tools and consolidating into a risk rating.
Biggest red flag you spot instantly in early stage startups.
Lack of communication.
Skill feature CCOs must develop that's not in any textbook.
Communication.
So for anyone listening to that podcast, it's all about communication.
Yes, very important.
One hill you'll always die on compliance-wise.
Be truthful and credible.
I thought you were going to say communication.
No, I should, huh?
You should have. And last question.
Yes.
If you weren't in compliance or ops, what would you be doing instead? I feel like I have my answer, but I'll let you take it away.
Well, actually, I'll throw you a curveball.
Really?
Because I haven't mentioned this. I would want to be a travel blogger.
No way.
Yeah, I love
Wow.
to travel, and it gives me being a travel blogger. It just seems very fun. Would love to try it out.
So next company is a cross-border payments company.
Yeah.
Jenny, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much. And yeah, that's a wrap.
Thank you.